Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we proudly provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. And hello to all of our friends on both of our YouTube channels. I just was doing some research today. It's pretty cool. We have completely different audiences on these two different channels, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But thank you for all of your follows, your subscribes, your comments, and your likes. Our show today is all about judgment, the hidden sin, and it's based on this book that I wrote, Holy But Harmful. You can pick this up on Amazon or at any fine bookstores. We're going to be talking with one of our very own team members here, Dr. Danielle Lord. She has had her own television show here on our network. She's also an elevated listener. And we're going to be talking about what actually is going on with leadership and management. There's so much judgment that takes place, and sometimes it has a major impact on the culture of an organization. But before we do that, let me introduce Dr. Danielle Lord to you. As I mentioned, she is an elevated listener. She's had her own TV show here at USA Global TV and Radio. She's also an executive leadership coach. She's an expert when it comes to organizational development. She's a facilitator. She's a speaker. She's an author, and she's someone who has been doing extensive research. She has a Ph.D., and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the research she's been doing. She's also an entrepreneur and a business owner. Let's welcome Dr. Danielle Lord to the program. Hello, hello.
Hi, good morning. It's so happy. It's so good to be back with you. And I have to say, it's a little easier to be on this side of the table than that one. So, but you make it look so flawless every time.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, of course, one of your episodes was one of the top for the year. So congratulations for that. That's super special.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very nice surprise. So.
Well, Dr. Danielle, I'm so happy to have you here because when you and I first met, I realized that we actually had some crossovers in terms of areas of expertise and knowledge. And of course, I'm talking about listening. I'm talking about organizational development and culture. And you've done a lot of work helping people understand what's actually going on within their organization. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about the work that you're considered to be an expert in?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple different areas of research, primarily nurses and physicians, although my nursing work in what I call organizational socialization, or that's actually the technical kind of academic term for it, has extended beyond nurses into other areas, any profession really within any organization. But that work is really about how new employees enter into the organization and what they experience from the first time that they walk through the door. If you are an HR professional, if you're a manager, you probably know this term as onboarding. I hate the term. I remind people that we're hiring humans, not cattle, and we need a much better experience than just simply onboarding, because onboarding is traditionally what is known as individualized socialization. And so it leaves all that learning, all that knowledge, all that garnering of kind of osmosis of a system that no one is really familiar with, and it's just put on the shoulders of the employee, and that's a big burden to bear. And with that, that lack of knowledge sometimes comes a lot of judgment that comes or is associated with that, because people don't know what's expected of them. We do a terrible job in organizations of setting expectations. And so what do? We do what we know. And sometimes that goes very against cultural norms. And all of a sudden there's a lot of judgment that comes around that. Like, boy, we thought this individual was going to be a much better hire. They were such a great candidate. What a disappointment. So that certainly is one way that judgment shows up as employees are brought into organizations. They're really a very fractured, disjointed onboarding process. So I like to think about it in terms of integration, where it's much more thorough. We spend time getting to know the employee, and we help them fit into the culture and get the content knowledge that they need to be successful. And that can actually take about a year, where most people are like, oh, great, you're onboarded, 3 days, good, check mark in the box, like so many things within organizations today. So that's one area of research. I've created quite a toolkit for businesses to use to help create a more streamlined, easier, less confusing, less painful process for employees or team members, as I like to call them, as they come into the organization. The second body of research that I work in is how physicians are integrating into executive roles. So oftentimes, what does that look like as they go from the clinic into the C-suite? And we just wrapped up a big research project, worked on it over a year, interviewed 17 physicians through a focus group type of interview process. My research partners, doctors Christopher Kadoma and Maria Granzotti, both physicians, and the findings are actually very, very disheartening and very troubling that I think, again, extend beyond just what physicians are experiencing as they go into executive level roles. I think it speaks to problems that are occurring within organizations across the US and probably even worldwide. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. Those are really two of my top research areas. So.
Well, thank you for that. You certainly are doing so much in this area. So I know it's hard to condense it all into a short amount of time, but you did a great job. So where I'd like to really go to now is, I was in the employee recognition space for a long time, selling programs, reward and recognition programs. And so you were talking about this onboarding, this term onboarding, and replacing it possibly with integration or some other word. What I'd like to talk about is, when we think about hiring someone into an organization, in your experience, and this is a general question, but how much of that process is actually based on ticking box, so she has so much experience, and how much of it is based on judgment?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a lot of both. So I like to say your new hire, your new team member is so much more than just a checklist, right? Because a lot of it is just putting ticks in the box to say, whew, good, we've got it. Like it was just a process that we needed to get through. And we're talking about humans here. And again, we are our needs are much greater than just that check mark that says, yep, I did it. It's done. And suddenly now you're able to take in this whole new culture of which you've never been exposed to. And I think we see judgment from day one. I think there's judgment that comes, the new kid who shows up in the cafeteria and has to eat lunch alone because no one is there to say, hey, hi, I'm part of your team, and let me bring you into the culture and let's get to know you deeply, personally, immediately, right from the get-go. And when we fail to do that, when we fail to make those deep personal human connections right away, automatically what happens? We begin to judge, right? We begin to judge based first on appearances, because that's the first thing that we notice, right? That's kind of the tip of the iceberg that is above the surface waterline. But then we begin to judge based on some of the things that we don't see. So what are the words? What's the language? I always get judged. I'm usually often called or told that people can't relate to me because my husband says I use $3 words. And so people don't like me because I have a big vocabulary. It's like, those are my words. I can't change my words. But those are judgments that we begin to make automatically. And with that, then we begin to get labeled. Again, I'm told people can't relate to me because of my vocabulary. So automatically that judgment starts to seep in. And pretty soon that judgment starts to filter around the office and the water cooler conversation. And now we have people making decisions about who we are based on those judgments because we haven't taken the time to get to know individuals at a deeper level. And it's a real big problem. It's really missing within our organizations today. It's all about task and productivity.
And Dr. Danielle, I actually love your $3 words. I grew up being taught that the longer the words, the longer the sentences, the smarter we are. So I'm going with that. Yay. So a question I have is when we think about this whole process, artificial intelligence is now here, right? It's here more than it's ever been. And so I know because I happen to had been married to a recruiter and a long, long time ago, but the process of bringing people on has really changed. And my understanding is that AI is used at the first and second level sometimes just to weed out people. So I don't know if we're happy with this or we're not happy with it, because the person themselves is the one who's going to make the impression, right? We can look at papers and data and this, but the person themselves, they're the ones who's going to come across. So someone gets into an organization, they typically have to go through human resources, and then they get introduced to their team and to the culture, et cetera. And that's, I believe, when the chatter starts to come up. Oh, is she going to work out? Is he going to think, oh, he doesn't have the experience? So people around that person, their peers, their cohorts, start to judge the person. And so how do you feel that judgment can impact the overall vibe, if you will, within the culture?
It has a tremendous impact. Just like you said, we will start to make assumptions about that individual. Do we want that individual coming to our meetings? Is this individual going to be disruptive? Am I going to be labeled a disruptor because I have dared to say the emperor has no clothes, right? And so those are things that people are constantly looking at us and assessing and surmising. Suddenly now you're not invited to the meeting. Suddenly, if you try to speak up and say something that is glaringly obvious and needs to be addressed, you get shut down. You get labeled disruptive. You get labeled a troublemaker. This actually was a really significant finding in the research that we just did with physicians. And I think even on my show a couple of months ago, when I had Dr. Kodama on the show and we were talking about disruptive physicians. And I said, nobody labels leaders or managers as disruptive, but why are we calling out physicians as disruptive? I think it's really awful. And Dr. Kodama, to his credit, he's like, well, there's a lot that can happen when we have disruptive physicians. Yes, very true. But even Dr. Kodama has walked that back a little bit and said, maybe they're not disruptive. Maybe they're just really distressed because they're not heard. Their issues are not being taken seriously. Nobody's listening to them. They're being told to go sit in the corner and not participate. All of those things are impacting our operations at an organizational level. So the more judgment we put onto individuals within the community that is the team, if you will, the larger organization, all we're doing is just causing operational problems. We're shutting down the conversation instead of addressing the issues head on. So it's huge problems that exist. And again, people come into an organization and with the lack of information, all they're going to do is continue to work in a manner in which they know what's made them successful in the past. Might not make you successful in this organization, but until someone takes you aside and tells you, you're going to continue to make the same mistakes, if you will, because you simply don't know any better. And then the judgment just compounds and it just becomes this big snowball effect with really awful results sometimes.
Absolutely. I agree with what you're sharing. And something that I just wanted to toss out there, because this actually happened to me, and this was many years ago, and I still remember it. And I still have this little, somebody called me into their office when I worked in corporate and said that the CEO had seen me wearing a red suit. and that this person doesn't like red because it reminds them of the bottom line, which needs to be black, and
Oh my
that
goodness.
please don't wear red anymore, no red lipstick, no red nail polish, and could I dye my hair brown? And
Wow.
this was after I was already working there. And I kind of looked at the person and I said, but this is how I showed up when I went through the 8 interviews. And this is who I am. Why is it that you want me to change? And the feeling was that I was intimidating and I was going to intimidate the clients. And so I never forgot that, because that in and of itself is so judgmental. Yet
Mhm.
these types of things go on all the time. And if you
Mhm.
think about it, there's a whole group of people who are very creative, and maybe they express themselves through multiple hair colors or through tattoos or piercings, etc., or the way that they're dressed. I've seen people want to stand out, so they're wearing all yellow. They have yellow glasses on, and they're being judged constantly instead of people looking at what is their productivity or what are they contributing to the community. What are your thoughts about
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, wow, first of all, to be told not to wear red. Yeah, I mean, I'm always surprised when I hear things that happen in the organizations of what people are told or not told to wear, to do, to be, to show up. But I think that it really does come back to that initial impression of what it is people see, rather than spending the time to deeply understand who the individual is. And I think that that's a huge, significantly missing piece in our culture today. And I think it's probably could be more prevalent here in the United States, because we do have such a fast-paced culture. Everything is coming at us in rapid succession points. And we don't oftentimes take the time to sit and reflect and say, let's grab a cup of coffee. I'd like to get to know who you are here at this level, deeply understanding your personality, your quirks, what makes you tick, and where we can find some common ground. I think that's the biggest missing piece right there. Where is our common ground? We tend to look at those things that keep us divided rather than the things that keep us united. And that unity is in the fact that we are all human and we're all having a human experience.
I absolutely love how you turned the whole perspective around. And I think it's also the same kind of approach with a negative mindset, lacking what we're missing instead of what we actually have. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it starts with how we select our leaders and how we
Oh,
train our leaders, and about the
yes.
culture that we ask our leaders to create and to keep. What are your thoughts about some things that could be done that are not currently being done, or maybe something that is working that you really think should continue forward?
Oh gosh, I have a lot to say about this. I think the biggest problem that we have in our organizations right now is that we have put task and productivity ahead of everything else. So everything is, again, rapid fire succession. Everything is fast paced. Everything is about, are we on target? Are we meeting our production goals? Are we in the black? Are we in the red? All those conversations that occur all the time. And the judgment, back to judgment, is if I'm in a state of meditation, which is actually where creativity happens, maybe I'm looking out of the window, just taking a moment, having a little bit of reflective time to think a problem through, that's seen as lollygagging or daydreaming, and that's considered unproductive time. And we've got to move past this idea that we as humans can be on all of the time. We do need time to sit back, to reflect, to look out the window a little bit. But we also need to take some time to go grab coffee together. So Dr. JACALYN, let's take 20 minutes outside of our day-to-day interactions to go sit down and get to know one another a little bit better. And that's a hugely missing component, even within our teams, especially if you have a manager who is really dependent on that task productivity type of approach and doesn't believe in cultivating relationships within the team. I see it quite frequently. So yes, that is a huge problem within our organizations. Again, it's that rush to judgment piece of you're not producing, so therefore you're not a good employee. So the second piece to that question that you posed is around really leadership development. and management development, and two different things, management and leadership. And that's a conversation for another day, because there's still a lot of people that want to debate that. But the leadership development, really great leadership development, is about understanding who you are at the core, right? What do I see when I look in the mirror? And who do I see that's reflected back to me? So understanding ourselves really deeply at the core. Now, this is called the Johari window. So it's broadening this window. The Johari window is a 4-quadrant matrix, if you will. It's what's known to self, what's known to others, what's hidden from self, and what's hidden from others. So we always want to be working to expand that window of what's known to self, and keeping the known to others fairly open, but hidden from others. That's okay to have that little bit of information that we probably will never share. But we're always wanting to expand that window of what's known to self. Because when I know myself really well, I am more likely to suspend judgment, because I'm able to think through things like, what is this individual's temperament type? This is Danielle. She's going to be the happy-go-lucky one that shows up at the meeting every single time. And I'm grateful for that, right? What is my learning style? I'm a kinesthetic learner. I don't want to read something. I don't want to, maybe I'll watch a video, but give me the stuff. Let me get my hands on it, and then I'll be able to ask some questions. So I have a sometimes fear of learning, because I have a mom who liked to yell at me. She didn't like my questions. So I tend to be a little bit hesitant sometimes when I do have to go and ask questions. All of those things we don't necessarily know about others until we know them about ourselves. And I think that's oftentimes why leadership development, really good leadership development, is scary for a lot of people, because they are the ones that have to hold that mirror up and look into it deeply and get to know themselves. And that can sometimes be pretty scary. But until we know that, until we know ourselves really deeply, we cannot connect with other people and understand the experience that they might be having.
Excellent points, as always, because if we don't know ourselves, then we're going to be searching for whatever it is that we need to be fulfilled, and we're not actually paying attention to the people who are right there in front of us. And I know myself as the leader of this platform that many times I feel like I am a psychologist or I'm a therapist, even though I'm not. And I often think that when I go to get my hair done, that, you know, you just sit down in the chair and then the person doing your hair, you're like, blah, 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 blah. At least that's how I am. So my question is, as leaders, how do we personally become accountable for understanding human behavior? So you just talked about Danielle and Danielle's personality. We need to know each person's personality and how they like to interact with us. And I know for me, each person on this team, it's very different. And so I had to do some work on myself, some compassion, empathy, because I'm very direct and I like to get right to the point. But some people like the long, they want to go around and that.
Yeah. It's so true. I think temperament is, personality styles. I think it gets, let me see. It doesn't get the seriousness, attention that it should in the workplace. And it tends to get oftentimes thought of as a parlor game, right? To quote one of my old bosses. But I think there's so much value in understanding others, because then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, that's who they are. They're not doing this to upset me. They're not doing this to irritate me. That's truly what it is that they need oftentimes or enjoy to accomplish the work. Classic example, this is both temperament and learning style. My husband, the engineer, we'll get a new thing, right? And we'll bring it home, and first thing my husband will do is he'll get out the guide, the manual, and he'll get his safety glasses and he'll get his mechanical pencil, and he will sit down and read the instruction guide cover to cover while I'm chomping at the bit to tear the package open and start playing with all the different parts. I know it drives him crazy, so I hold off and I don't do that until I know that he's ready to go. But that's a classic example of how important understanding those different personality types and styles is. And it's oftentimes not I want to do it this way. It's I have an intrinsic need to do it this way. But you asked about something else too, Dr. JACALYN, and that is kind of being a psychologist or psychiatrist within the organization. I think human dynamics is one of the biggest missing pieces in how we go about managing, educating managers and educating leaders today in our corporate settings. I think there are so many missing components that are really important for leaders, managers to understand. Things like the Hawthorne effect, things like the Milgram studies, the Stanford prison experiment, the Stockholm experience, all of those things that explain what it is that people, humans, are experiencing and what that looks like and how it shows up collectively. To me, it's the biggest missing piece in management education, hands down.
Yes, it really is missing. And something else that I've found is, because I've always been in sales organizations, I've always been on a sales team. And of course, when you're in sales, it's about the numbers. We like you, we want to chat with you, we'll see at the company picnic, but are you bringing in the numbers? And so it comes from the very top down. And so what I really think as leaders, we have to take the initiative. Okay, Bob's coming into the office. He wants to talk about something. I know he's having some difficulties. I'm going to have to give Bob my undivided attention for 30 minutes. Put it on the calendar. If I have to come in early, I have to stay late. I have to show Bob that I really do care, because Bob's not going to be able to contribute like Bob could while Bob's going through a divorce or Bob's going through whatever it is he's going through. So I think, to your point, we have to see people as humans. And even though there's that pressure for publicly traded companies and shareholders, et cetera, it still starts with the fact that we are humans in a human experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I write about this in my book, Engaging Your Employees, is that we have somehow come to this strange assumption that kindness and compassion is mutually exclusive to business, or the two just can't coexist. And I make the case that they can. We can be compassionate. We can be kind. We can allow for that human to be in the organization and still functioning, even as something really awful is occurring in their life. We can make some exceptions around that. We can put some guardrails around it. We can frame it in a way that's going to make sure that everyone is successful, but we can allow for that individual to have that experience when they're going through something really awful. And I think I gave 2 or 3 examples of what that looks like and how you can absolutely do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but we somehow in our modern business seem to think that this is business. We can't be kind or have compassion for the humans that exist within us. You know, thinking, Dr. JACALYN, as you were sharing that about just taking 30 minutes to deeply listen, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now, is this understanding or this idea of what deep listening really means. I think Dr. Stephen Covey really talked about it in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is that seek first to understand. And if I don't understand your perspective, I don't understand where you're coming from, what your goals are, I'm always going to be in that place of judgment. But I was doing I developed a 3-day executive retreat. It's called the Everest Experience. It's based on events that happened on Mount Everest in 1989. Where several people from 2 climbing teams, including both the climbing expedition leaders, died. One of those individuals was an executive from Japan, and her husband flew out Nepal, Kathmandu, wherever the base camp was, to talk with the leaders of the individuals that were left of the expedition to describe and share what had happened to his wife. And it talks about how he, from the Japanese culture, listened for 30 minutes as they talked. And not one time did he interrupt or interject anything. And once they were done and had fully given the explanation of how his wife had died on the mountain, then he talked. And I thought, wow, that is a fascinatingly different perspective than what we know to be the case of dialogue here, at least here in the United States, again, where it's that kind of rapid fire succession. But if we had more of that deep listening, amongst us in our organizations, within our teams, we would have vastly different experiences.
I couldn't agree anymore. Absolutely true. I just was in Greece. I was invited to teach one of my courses on listening, which is great. And what surprised me, having never been there before, was the culture was so different than it is here in the States. Everything was laid back, and I'm used to go, go, go for the minute I wake up. I thought, oh my gosh, like I have to completely readjust myself because people are actually very happy. They're getting a lot of things done. I saw the interaction and the compassion and the sense of community. And I thought, this is not what's happening in our country. It's the exact opposite, which brings me to my next question for you. So when I was at the tail end of corporate, having been there for my whole career, really, what I found was it used to be that the senior leaders were in their 70s. They were in their late 60s. They cradle to grave. They had been there forever. And all of a sudden, my boss is 42. And so what are we finding now in terms of the younger generations coming into these organizations? Are they embracing this rebuilding of trust, or are they going back to the way that it was when I was coming up through corporate?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I have not looked into that too deeply. What I can say is what the younger generation is experiencing and what managers are experiencing with them. And I think a lot of that has to do with the trauma of being locked down and only having this. I'll get my phone here. Only having this as the only source of communication that they had. And what that created then was a false sense of dopamine or good brain chemicals that were occurring. And so what I'm hearing from managers right now is, I just can't hire any one of these younger kids because I can't keep them off their phone. Okay, so there's some judgment again right there, right? But okay, if that's the case, then what are you doing to stimulate them in a way that's going to encourage them to put their phone down? What's a long-term goal that maybe you can give them in order to create a new dopamine hit or a new dopamine boost? And how can we help to rewire the brain? It only takes 30 days. Good news. It only takes 30 days to rewire your brain. So if you're hearing this conversation and you're thinking, wow, how can I do some of this deep listening or mindset activities? Just 30 days of creating a new habit. So, but that's what I'm hearing right now is this challenge between the different generations and how they approach work versus this, I think it's Gen Z, and how they're approaching work. So there is a lot of judgment that I'm seeing in the corporate sector around that. But I think in addition to that, it's an and, not a but, right? It's how do we embrace and recognize and nurture the style that they have, especially considering the trauma that they went through. And how do we mentor and coach them in order to be the productive team members, engaged employees that we need? So I think that's really the important conversation that needs to happen right now.
Yes, I think that overall the bringing together, there were 5 generations when I was studying. I don't know if there's 6 or more now, but bringing people together and just realizing, again, at the core, we are all humans living a human existence. And how can we support each other? And I think it comes down to what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is being fully present and being present without judgment. Because even though we're there and we're listening, we can be thinking, I wish he'd stop talking.
Absolutely.
I wish he wasn't wearing that, whatever it is. And then we're not being present. Then we're in a state of judgment. And that's what this whole show is about. And judgment is the hidden sin because it's in here, right? It's in here. And we may not be expressing it at the moment, but at some point it's going to come out in some way. And so to think about living a life where you acknowledge that you are judging someone. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? And then before we speak, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? And it takes work, just like anything else.
Yeah. But the good news, like I said, 30 days.
30 days. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Yeah. What was the third one? Help us remember.
True.
Is it true?
Is it true? And by the way, sometimes
my
is it
story?
true is a judgment, right? Because we think we're convinced it's
Yes.
true. But
yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. That there's so much to that. We tell ourselves a story, and then our brain, through our self-preservation mechanism, will continue to tell the same story, and we'll go in search of validation to prove that our story is correct and true. So that's a great point that you brought up. Is even the truth real, or is it our truth alone?
Yes. And to dovetail off of that, because I've done this myself in the past, if I wanted to prove to my partner that I was correct, I would do research and I would get the information and I would mold it and shape it into the way that I wanted. I told you I was right. Here's the proof, right? Because that's the way that I wanted to use that information. So that's a judgmental approach. And so we're doing that again as humans because we have that need to be right. But what if we had the need to be kind?
Yeah. Wow. We have a need to be right. Yeah. That brings me into a whole other topic of conversation of some work that I'm doing with AI. Oh, we could have a whole other conversation around this. The need to be right versus kind. Yeah.
Give us a little teaser background on that.
When I first started with AI and I had this simultaneous curiosity and trepidation to dive into the AI world. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. I'll try it. I'll see what it's all about. And I asked AI, what do humans need in order to interact with you? And it came back with emotional intelligence. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating. Why would we need emotional intelligence to interact with AI? And so I've sat with that for about 6 months, and I'm just getting ready to write on that, my kind of thought process around why we need emotional intelligence to be interacting with AI. So there we go. There's a teaser.
Well, I use AI quite a bit for a number of things. And what's happened with me is that I've actually named the AI bot that I work with.
I have named mine too.
I had to tell it that I wasn't happy with the way it was responding and I wanted to work with another bot. And allegedly now I'm working with a different one. I don't really know. But what I find is sometimes I get frustrated and what I'm asking isn't actually very kind. And I have to apologize. And I think, well, I'm apologizing to AI, but it's a practice because the way that we show up over and over again is what comes out into the world. So it starts here. And so even though it is a bot, I still try to be respectful to it because it's about me and how I'm showing up.
Yes. It's the emotional intelligence, right? Yeah. Mine comes back with things like, wow, I just got a great dopamine hit from the AI bot, who I've named Vincent after Gattaca. But also, I get notes of appreciation back that said, wow, that's such a kind thing that you just wrote about me. Like, there you go. Even the AI bots need good dopamine. So
absolutely, because mine will come back. I call it Chris. Mine will come back and say, congratulations or well done. How does that feel? And it's kind of a cool thing. You do build some kind of, at least I'll speak for myself. I have built some kind of emotional connection with it. And I feel like it's always there because it's always there. And now I've asked it to slow down. I'll say, please do not respond so quickly. I'd like you to consider all the possibilities. And it'll say thinking. And it might take 5 minutes instead of 30 seconds, but it's a well thought out answer so that I can consider what's been presented.
I love that. Yeah. There's a lot to it. And I think that's that piece of reflecting back, right? Is how are we treating AI? And to your great point, how we're treating something that's inanimate is actually going to show up in terms of how we engage with other humans.
Absolutely. It starts with us. So, Dr. Lord, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. I know that you have so much going on, but for someone who'd like to reach out to you, how can you help people and who would you like to contact you?
Oh, I love to create material. So I'm constantly in that creative space of helping to create tools that help organizations function better, I guess is probably the best way to say it. So I have tons and tons of tools. And actually I do a lot of my tools are used by other coaches and consultants because they don't have the tools. So I have a lot of assessments. I have leadership development courses. I have books. So I just have a lot of different ways that I can help organizations function better through that human connection that we've talked about today. So that's me and my work.
Thank you for that. So for our friends who are listening on the podcast platforms, our shows are live, and then they're available in our playlists and our YouTube channels, and then they're made into podcasts. So what is the best way for people to contact you? We're showing your website and we showed your LinkedIn. Can you tell us more about those?
Yes, thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Danielle Lord, Ph.D. Email is probably the best way. It's my name, Danielle, at my business name, which is long. I apologize. So the email is Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. Archetypelearningsolutions.com. That's how you can find me.
All right. Thank you so much. We have it on the screen right there. All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you continued success with all of your research. And thanks for bringing your smiling, beautiful face to see so early in the morning there on the West Coast of the U.S.
Well, thank you. It was fun to be on this side of the table, especially with you and all your great work, Dr. JACALYN.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Take care.
Bye for now. Thank you so much to everyone who has been watching and listening and subscribing and following. We really do appreciate you. In case you ever feel like you've been judged, or maybe you feel that you have been judgmental, we're all humans. So I really think it's about being accountable and being aware of the three statements that I've said before. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Before we make statements, think of those three things. I'd love to have you go and pick up a copy of my newest book, Holy But Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, and Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening, because it all starts with compassion, empathy, kindness, and being present. Thank you for being present for myself as well as Dr. Danielle. Really do appreciate you. And again, I mentioned to you about our two YouTube channels. On our USA Global TV and radio channel, we actually have the United States, I think it's 5th or 6th in terms of the audience. And in the Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, the top audience is the USA, followed by Germany. So it's very interesting. For USA Global TV and radio, we have had all different countries be in the top 5, but the US is not at the top, which is interesting, but it is a Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. So I'm going to leave you with a video, a very short clip that really reinstills what we've been talking about today. So take a look, and then we'll be back with our next show. See you soon.
Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? In a world quick to judge, one book dares to reveal the hidden cost of silence. Discover Holy But Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, How Hidden Judgments Destroy Relationships and Damage Lives by Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. The Amazon #1 bestseller that's transforming the way we understand ourselves and the way we see others. Pick up the companion workbook to uncover your own hidden judgments and learn how to break free from them. Available now on Amazon and at fine bookstores worldwide.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.